Welcome to the Jazz Roundtable, brought to you by Live at 0 BPM, with your host, Grammy Award-winning percussionist and mallet player, Billy Holting. Tonight's guest, Don Randi. If you care to donate, click on the donate/tip jar link in the description or on our website at liveat0bpm.com/tip jar. You can also tip on Venmo at ZEROBPM. And now, let's get to the music with your host, Billy Holting.
Hey, everybody in Internet land. Thank you for coming to another show. This is the Jazz Roundtable number 6, and we got Don Randi here. Don is a jazz staple in Los Angeles. He's also an amazing studio musician, having played with the Wrecking Crew, the Wall of Sound for years. You've all heard him play, whether you knew it or not. He's also the owner of the Baked Potato, the famous jazz club, and my personal favorite here in Los Angeles. So we're going to get to Don. He's got a lot of great stories. We're going to talk about his book. We're going to talk about the old days. We're going to talk about what he's doing now, talk about producers, directors. You're going to have a blast. But let me just say, if you're watching, and I'll mention this a couple times, please like or subscribe or whatever page you're on, Facebook or YouTube or Twitch. Like, subscribe, follow us, do all that sort of thing. Also, if you want to give a tip, we're all tip-based here, 100%. We don't have any sponsors or anything. Any bit helps. If you're enjoying the show and you want to reach out, that'd be great. Go ahead and do that. And let's see, I'm going to be in the chat rooms to see who's here. I can already see we have a couple of our regulars here. Rick, Toby, and Kim are here. So let's get right to Don. Where is he? There he is. Hey, Don, how are you?
Fine. Hi, Billy. Great to be here, man.
So full disclosure for everybody out there, I've known Don for 30 plus years. I've played in his band a few times, and we've actually gone on tour to Iceland and Norway together. So, and I also play in the Wrecking Crew tribute band with him. So I know Don pretty well, and I'm learning stories I didn't know. So this is going to be a really fun night. But let's talk about, Don's career. Like I said before, he played on a million records, and including, Jan and Dean, Frankie Lane, the Crystals, Doris Day, a ton of Motown stuff when they moved out to L.A., the Honeys, Keely Smith, Lou Rawls, the Bootleggers, the Ronettes, Frank Sinatra, Glenn Yarborough, Nancy Sinatra, Sonny and Cher, and we're going to talk about a lot of that. But Don, let's go back and do what I like to call the origin story. So tell us, growing up, when did you start playing piano, and what was the situation?
Well, I grew up in a place called Woodridge, New York, which was at the heart of the Catskill Mountains. And my father had a deli restaurant that most of the agents would book all the acts that appeared all over the Catskill Mountains. It looked like a bookie joint in the back of the restaurant because they had all their phones, and they would place acts in all the hotels, and they were very, very busy, especially through the Second World War years. That was a big feature to bring up great entertainment from New York City to the Catskill Mountains. And I was 5 and a half, and my dad asked me, would you like to play piano? Because I was always doodling at the piano in the back of the restaurant. And occasionally I would sit there and actually pick something out. So he got me a teacher, Milton Jacobs, and I went fishing and didn't go to my first piano lesson. I forgot about it completely. And of all things, it was ice fishing, too, in bitter cold. I'll never forget it. And I got back, and my dad said to me, did you forget something? And that's when I remembered. So I went the next day, and from that day on, a love of the piano, but it was all classical music that I was playing from that age till about 15 to 16 years old.
Now, now when did you first start playing with other people?
Well, right around when I was 15, I would hear all the acts rehearsing with their musical directors in the back of my father's restaurant. Mm-hmm. And one time a pianist didn't show up, and I said, well, I could play that, And I went, and that was the first gig I did. I became the pianist for that one act, and we did 3 shows on Friday, 3 shows on Saturday, and 3 shows on Sunday. I was 15 years old.
Wow.
And I just loved what I was doing. It was fun playing live, which is something I've always loved doing, and having to play with bands, because all the hotels had bands. And here was this 15-year-old kid playing with all these guys from New York. They were all in pit bands that worked all the Broadway shows.
Well, you had a good story about your first jam session that you showed up to.
Which one?
You told me a story about the first one you showed up to, and you didn't really know You had no idea what to do. You hadn't
Oh,
been-
absolutely. I was. Thanks for making me remember. I was working for a record distributing company called California Records, and they had all the East Coast jazz and all the West Coast jazz. I was, I think, 18 years old or 19 years old at that point, and I kept listening to the greatest artists. Miles Davis, Sonny Coltrane, and then on the East Coast, that was from the East Coast. On the West Coast, there was great piano players. Hampton Hawes and Pete Jolly, and they had the Lighthouse All-Stars, and they were all. So I got to both worlds all day long while I was a stock boy. And one of the guys that worked there used to go to jam sessions. He says, "Why don't you come to one with me?" So we went to one at a place called Marianne Surf Club, which was at 6th Street and Western Avenue. Actually, it was a block from Western Avenue, and it was a great jazz club. And on Sundays, they'd had open jam sessions, and they forced me to get up there and try and play. And I couldn't even play a blues at that point. And I just sat there, but I just loved the thrill of hearing a drummer take a fill and the bass player. And I said, oh, this is where I'm going to end up, And I knew it right from that. I just loved it. And I listened to so much music, and then I started to play it little by little, but little by little. And the woman asked me if I would like to have the gig at Marianne Surf Club.
Oh, wow.
And she had a wonderfully tuned, every week, a great baby grand piano. So I had a trio, my first trio, Don Randi Trio. And we played there, and little by little, somebody on the Sunset Strip said they heard me and told a club owner at a club called Sherry's, where Hampton Hawes played and Pete Jolly played, and Stu Williams, a lot of great Marty Page. Marty Page worked Sunday nights with a great bass player by the name of Joe Mondragon, both monster musicians. And they had to go on tour, so he said, would you like to play the off night? I said, okay. He asked the club owner if I was working on Sunday because he knew her, Marianne. She said, sure. So we ended up playing the off nights at Sherry's. Only the first 2 weeks was with a duo. He couldn't have a trio. They just had bass player, piano. And I told him, I said, I can't do this anymore because I have to have a trio. So we figured it out, and we made it for a trio in that little area behind the piano bar. And it was an exciting time because he then asked me if I wanted to play there 5 nights or 6 nights a week. And that's when I had to leave the other gig.
Right.
And I finally did leave the other gig and got a gig with Pat. And what's really interesting is Pat was a union house, so we had to join the union. We joined the musicians union way back then, and I have been in the union ever since.
That's great.
But can you imagine a club owner paying that a union scale and paying the pension and the health and welfare? And this was, I didn't know about it, but he did. And we were there from 1957 almost till 1970.
Wow. Because you moved to L.A. in 54, right?
Right, 1954.
17. But now let's go back a little bit before that. Tell us about your very first gig ever.
My very first gig ever.
With the boxer.
I was 15 years old, and one of my teachers, Irving Hertz, was an amazing musician, one of the great pianists of all time, but also a great arranger and great teacher of music. And he wasn't feeling very well. I didn't know that he was sick at that time. And he said, you had to help me out at the sports banquet. He says, they're having a sports banquet for all the teams at this hotel. They've donated it. And Rocky Marciano was going to be there. I said, wow, what am I going to do? Thank you for inviting me. He says, you're going to play the piano for Rocky Marciano. Otherwise, he won't do the sports banquet. I said, well, what is he going to do, dance or what? No, he says he's a singer. So here I am, and I'm a big fight fan, and so is my dad. So here I get to meet Rocky Marciano, the nicest guy in the world, and we rehearse. He had like an Irish tenor voice. Here's this big, tough guy, but his voice was really high, and I forget the songs we did. He did one Irish tune and one kind of like an Italian song, but they both were like, the high tenors. And so that was my first gig, playing for Rocky Marciano. Pretty wild, actually.
That's great. And then you moved out to L.A., like I said, in
1954.
54, and you went to school out here, and you told us about the job. You were working at a record store, and that's where you really got exposed to jazz and listening to it. So moving forward, how did you go from that to start getting the session calls? Who did you meet? How did you get
let me
in?
just go back for a second.
Oh, okay.
My dad, in his restaurant, he had the first outdoor speakers in front of the restaurant. And he was a big Nat King Cole fan. And most people don't realize it. He was an incredible pianist at the same time. And then, of course, Art Tatum and Oscar Peterson, they all came. But the first guy I got to listen to was Nat King Cole, which I thought was pretty wild. And I was a fan and still am to this very day. But when we came to California, I had to go to school. I was 17 and a half. And everybody at the L.A. Conservatory was on the GI Bill. And they were there to learn. I came out to have a party. And there was no party. I had to really bear down. And I had great teachers. I was very lucky. And that's where I went to school. And then I went to City College. And then I went to SC for a minute, to pick up special classes. But that was all 1954, 55, 56.
Okay. And then, so you're playing at Marianne's and at the other clubs. And so how did you start getting called to do recordings? And what was the recording scene like in L.A. at that time? Well,
it was just starting. I mean, it was already there, but I wasn't part of it. There were studio musicians that were doing sessions, We later called them the Suits guys because everybody showed up. There was no smoking. Everybody had shirt and ties on, sport jackets. And that's the way it was in the very beginning. And all of a sudden, a guy by the name of Steve Douglas, who was a saxophone player, who went to school with Phil Spector, he brought Phil into Sherry's, this club that we were working at, Sunset in Crescent Heights, and right in the middle of the Sunset Strip, as they so called it. And he liked what I was playing, and he was very knowledgeable about jazz, and he and I became friends almost instantly. And Steve also, with the three of us, were inseparable. We did everything together. And I get a call from Steve. He says, "You want to be on a recording session?" I said, "Sure." I didn't know what I was going to do. And sure enough, it was He's a Rebel with the Crystals, 1962. That was the first session I played. And little by little, from then on, I got another session and another session. And all the sessions we were playing, in the beginning, there was 3 or 4 piano players, 4 or 5 guitar players, a horn section.
Now, what was that like when you walked in? What were you expecting? 4 piano players and
I walked in and just glad to be there. I mean, I'm going to be part of something. I didn't know what.
Right.
But I loved the rock and roll right from, whereas most of the guys didn't care for it. I enjoyed being part of that cacophony of sound, because that was what he based it on. That was why he called it the Wall of Sound.
And those were mostly jazz players in the studio then,
Oh,
right?
yeah, sure. Yeah. Barney Kessel, Howard Roberts, Dennis Budimir. You never knew. And the piano players all had a jazz background. Al DeLore, who ended up being he produced most of Glenn Campbell's hits.
Ah.
But he also wrote songs and played. A terrific piano player. Mike Rubini was another one. Mike Spencer. And one of the guitar players, a young kid that went to school with Phil, was Russ Teidelman. And Russ was learning every time he stroked that guitar, he was learning something.
Yeah.
And became one of the top producers.
Now, you talked about also with the Wall of Sound, you have 4 keyboard players, 4 guitar players, and Phil Spector is producing. How did he handle having multiple guys on the same instrument?
Well, I always said we were the mud in his records in the Wall of Sound. We recorded at a studio called Gold Star, which had the greatest echo chamber of all time. And here we would be. You mind if I play a little bit?
Play a little bit.
Because this is basically... Met him on a Saturday to do run, run, to do run, 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 to do. That was the do run, run.
Yeah.
He's a rebel. See the way he walks down the street. And on that part, Those are called rolling eighths. So now you got to imagine me playing maybe here, somebody else playing here, somebody playing here. So he spread out, he wanted somebody on every octave of the piano.
Well, so back in the day, those were mono records, right?
And that's right.
Yeah, so you couldn't multi-track. So instead of having you play 4 different parts, you just got 4 different guys to play one.
And he had to hire guys that were capable of not making mistakes, and keep doing. And it was very tedious because he never did anything in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Except one album we did, my favorite album of all time. It was the Christmas album we did with all the Christmas songs, with all the artists. It was so much fun doing. And that one we kind of went quicker on. But that's one of the great Christmas albums of all time.
Now, how did he handle the guitar players? Phil knew the guitar players pretty well, right?
He did. He studied guitar.
Ah.
Guitar player and say, can you do it on this fret? And could you play it on this fret? And like to Tommy Tedesco, could you put a capo on? I want an open sound out of your guitar. And he would spread it out the same way he did the pianos, the guitars.
Wow.
And, and then Russ Titleman, who was just starting out at that point, was a straight rhythm player, up and down, the up and down chunks. It was a lot of fun, actually. We couldn't hear everything because we were doing our own part, but when you'd go in and listen, you'd hear all this stuff coming together on one track.
Yeah.
15 IPS.
That's crazy to think that was all on one mono track.
Yes, yeah.
That was the sound. Now, how about the transition from the Wall of Sound to the Wrecking Crew?
Well, there were so many great. I was so lucky to be amongst the. Ray Johnson was one of the piano. Plas Johnson's brother, a guy by the name of Gene Garth. Lincoln Mayorga came on a little later on. Mike Melvoin, Joe Sample, Larry Knechtel, one of the great piano. Larry Knechtel played one of the greatest piano parts of all time on Bridge Over Troubled Water. That's Larry Knechtel that plays the piano on that. That song is nothing without that piano play part. It's one of the great piano play.
I see.
On a record, but we all worked together, and we all played together, and there was enough work in those days for 10 of us, and everybody was busy.
Yeah.
And nobody got in anybody's way. Nobody had an ego. If they asked me to play like Floyd Kramer, I knew what they wanted because I didn't only listen to one station.
Right.
I listened to all the stations. If it was country, rock and roll, jazz, whatever it was, I was able to do that. So I didn't get, if they wanted more like Ray Charles, I knew it. You knew what most of the producers didn't know how to verbalize it.
Right.
So they would ask you to do it like this or play like somebody else, or could you make it a little more dark instead of saying black? I knew what they wanted.
Yeah.
Or could you make it more like Floyd Kramer? They wanted country.
So you had a particular talent for sounding like anybody they wanted.
That's right. I was the ultimate clone. And we all were. We all did. And then when Leon Russell came in, he was capable. Leon was a hell of a jazz player.
Yeah.
And nobody ever realized it. And Leon would sub for me at my gig at Sherry so I could do record dates when he first came from Oklahoma.
Well, I think I have a photo of Leon Russell, don't I?
Yeah, you do. There's the three of us.
Up here.
Yeah.
There you go.
There's Leon and I and Al DeLore.
That's Don in the middle of the piano, and to his right, your left.
Right.
That's Leon.
Yeah.
And then who's the guitar player next to you?
The piano player is Al DeLore. Great piano player and great writer and producer.
Very cool. Yeah, I was hoping to get more photos, but I'll tell you what. We'll just do a little blurb about this now. I have the book.
Yes.
You've heard these hands. I have a graphic of it. Let me get that up there because it's a little easier to see. But the subtitle is From the Wall of Sound to the Wrecking Crew and Other Incredible Stories by Don Randi and Nish. Hi, Nish, if you're watching. She helped you write the book. But it's one of those things that if you just look at the chapter names, it's either act or producer, one after another. It's truly an incredible book, and there's going to be more stories in here. So if you like the ones you hear tonight, pick up the book. It's wherever you can buy books these days.
Yeah,
so
sure.
That's very cool.
And it was fun doing. A girl who came into the baked potato quite often, and I think you might know her, Karen Nishimura.
Oh yeah.
She really was a great help with me doing that, and helped me formulate. She didn't try to bring all the political stuff that was going on through all those days. Mm-hmm. She just made it the story of the music, which was wonderful. It really helped me because that's what I wanted her to be about. There was so many variety, so many different producers, the different styles of producing. Phil, you would be in all day long on one song. Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, if you went to work for Brian, you could either be out in 4 or 5 hours on one song, or like when we did Good Vibrations, we were in for 3 months. We'd leave, come back, leave, come back, leave, come back.
Was that to do the album or to do the song?
That was the song.
Wow.
And that's probably got to be one of the great productions of all time, I mean, just this middle section, I'll play. No, I'll start it here. Good Vibrations went on and on and on. And he heard it. He knew what he wanted wherever he was. There's a section in that song. Uh-huh. There's a low organ thing where I played organ on it. I think it might have been a low B flat. And that's all it was. He told the rest of the guys in the band, go out, I just need Don. Now, he can't see me in the studio. So I'll try and create this for you. There are baffles surrounding me, all around my face, and all I could hear him is through the talkback of the speakers. So he said, Don, I just need you alone. I just want you to hold that note. He was working out a harmony part. Now, we had already been working 8.5 hours during the day, and I was tired. I really was. And I'm playing Hammond B3 on this one. All the guys are standing out in the hall, but there used to be a window in the door that you could look through and see inside the studio. And I look over to my left, and there's a pillow that you could sit on sometimes because those B3 seats were really hard. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking and looking, and I'm holding the pedal down of this low. It's done by the pedals of the organ, not by the keys. I have my foot on this low note. And Brian keeps saying, just hold it. Don't. I let up. He said, no, just keep it going. Keep it going. And then I hear the click. He said, okay, just take a minute. And as he said that, I grabbed the pillow, and I laid it over the foot pedal, and I laid down with my head on the bass pedal, the foot pedal of the Hammond B3 organ, and lo and behold, I fell right asleep. I went out. I was sleeping, that low note. And finally, I hear, click, click, Don, that was great. Thank you very much. We got it. Nobody knew except Hal Blaine. Hal looked in and he said to me, did you have a nice nap? Well, here we are 50 years later, and someone tells Brian that story, and I get a call from Brian. He says, did that really happen? I said, hey, you're damn right it did. And he cracked up. He had no idea because he couldn't see me, It was
that's
fun.
Amazing. That's amazing. I mean, and everybody out there probably knows that Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys, and he produced all the hits, right?
Yeah, he did. And when the only song that I got through me was, what was it? Help Me, Rhonda.
Yeah.
Now, why that threw me, first of all, we were at a different studio. It was at TTG, which was on, I guess, Highland and Sunset. There was a great studio. And we walked in, everything was written. Everything was written out perfectly.
Yeah.
And we sat down, we did it for an hour or so, and that was it. And as I'm playing, I said, this is a stone cold hit. If this is not a hit, I don't know anything. And we left, and sure enough, it became like number one, Help Me, Rhonda. Years later, I'm sitting with Leon Russell. This is like 35 years later. And Leon says, I played on Help Me, Rhonda. And he starts laughing. I said, no, you didn't. I played on that. He says, no, I played on it. I said, you weren't there. It's me. That was a hit record. He says, yeah, I know, but I played it on the original version of that, which got shelved I said, what are you talking about? He said, we did it 4 years before that record.
Wow.
And I had no idea. I had no idea.
Well, let me just, I want to say hi to the people in the chat rooms.
Sure.
And, we do these things in blocks. And a lot of people, well, Bill Reyes is here, Ginger is here, and a bunch of the regulars. Kim and Lisa's here. Some good friends of mine are here. Eddie Taduri is out there. And he is saying Don is one of my heroes, which is great. And he said that Good Vibrations was his favorite tune to play every night on tour with the guys in 73 to 74.
Yeah.
Ricky Fattar and I played double drums, and that song was more powerful than any other in the set. So that's cool.
That's great.
Now, you have a new album. Well, not so new. It's not your newest, but you have an album out called Good Jazzy Vibrations.
Yes. Yeah, we did as many of the Beach Boy tunes as we could in an album.
And that's with the cats that play with you at the Baked Potato.
That's
when you
right,
play there.
yeah.
So, and we're going to talk about the Baked Potato a little bit because it's like the iconic jazz club in Los Angeles. It's been here forever. And a couple other people, Lisa Miller says, just love hearing these timeless stories from my favorite music era. Thank you, Don. Camille says, his stories are great, and thanks for adding us to your book. So maybe there's some stories. Let me see if I can find Camille's full name. Camille Villaluna Alcacid. I'm butchering your last name, and I'm sorry about that, Camille. But let's see. And Derek Zimmerman is here, and he says, hi, Don.
Hi, yeah.
Derek used to play in your band. I went to college with Derek. He was part of the Northridge crew, and so... Yeah, it's fun. We got some.
Speaking of Northridge, half of my bands over the years have been from there.
Yeah, drummers and percussionists basically came from Northridge.
That's right.
My friend Susan is out there. She says hi. And over on the YouTube side, we have Eugenio. Eugenio is one of Dr. Chan's students. Dr. Chan is a teacher, I think, on the West Side, and he sends his students to watch and write reports about the concerts we have. So his students are always welcome. And I do want to say thank you to Rick and Andre, the first two people that have tipped tonight. So I'll put those links up in the drawer. But let's take a break from the stories for a second. Don, do you want to play a piece for us?
A piece of what?
Ba-dum-bum.
I'll tell you what I'll play.
Okay.
I had an album, the only hit album I ever had, called Mexican Pearls.
Right.
And it was produced by Tutti Camarata. And the arrangement is mine and Jack Nitschy's and Ray Pullman's. We all got together on it. And he said, I want you to go home and write a song. It's time for a Latin song. I want it to have a Latin flavor, almost mariachi. I said, what are you talking about? I hate mariachi music. He says, no, you're going to like it. He says, listen to it and listen to the meaning of it. I said, okay, he's paying for the date. He's paying for me to do an album.
Right.
So I take 5 albums home, and I listen to it. And before I leave the studio, he says, just think of maybe Dwayne Eddy's simple-style guitar, or perhaps make it so that anybody can play the melody with one finger. And that's what I wrote. I wrote a song called Mexican Pearls.
Okay. There's our live at Zero Beats crowd. They love you guys. Oh, I have another message, just really quick from Kathy Siegel Garcia. She says to say hi. There's a lot of chat going on. So hi, Kathy. Kathy's got her own shows 7 days a week. I don't know how she does that. I get killed doing 1 or 2 a week, but
I follow her on Facebook many times.
She posts a lot of great stuff. So, let's see. And a couple people commented that they love that song, and so very, very cool.
They must live in elevators a lot.
Okay, so Rick Converse had a question.
Sure.
Were you ever on the TAMI show with the Wrecking Crew guys?
Probably. We did, the big one we did was the TNT show that Phil Spector produced. But I'm not sure about that other one. The TNT one had loads of artists on it. Petula Clark, Sunshine Superman. Donovan was on that one. I got a big kick out of him and enjoyed it working with him. But April and Nino, April and Nino, they had a big hit record at that time. And that was just when Sonny and Cher was just getting started right after that. Sonny was Phil Spector's promo man.
Really?
He did all the promotion. He used to walk around with a wad of money that, in those days, payola was legal.
Yeah.
Oh, it's illegal, but everybody did it, And he would pay the disc jockeys, play my records.
Now, you've got let's do some stories here real quick, because you've got Sonny and Cher story. We were talking about guys that play identifiable licks that they just came up with in the studio. And that are like signature sounds from an album, and you've got several of those, but you told me one about I've Got You.
I've Got You, Babe?
Yeah.
That's fun, because I had played on the original, and on the original, there's an oboe. And it's Ray Pizzi doing that on oboe. Bop, 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 bop. I had a DX7 that had a great oboe sound, and I get a call for a date on some film, and they couldn't afford. They knew I was going to be playing the other parts, so they gave me a double for playing the oboe part on that record on the synthesizer. It was a DX7 actually when they first came out, so I got to play that on that record. But we did I Got You, Babe in San Francisco with a gigantic rock and roll band that had 3 drummers in it. I mean, and at the Cow Palace to 16,000 kids. And it was one of the most amazing shows, because that was the first time the Righteous Brothers was on a big show. And the Animals was on that show. And it was pretty fun. But you couldn't hear anything. I mean, the kids were screaming so loud that it was so. Of course, there's 2 changes, and if you get turned around, you're never going to get it together, and that's what happened.
That's cool.
And then all of a sudden, Sonny stops in the middle and says, "What's going on? What's going on?"
So now you also played something on a Linda Ronstadt album.
Oh, yeah. That was so much fun, that album. That was the Stone Ponies. And it was Sound of a Different Drum, which became a big monster hit for them. But when I walked into the session, there was this beautiful harpsichord sitting there, and I said to Nick Venet, the producer, "Who's playing that?" He said, "Well, you are." And I said, "Oh, my gosh." So I said, "Okay." And I don't know what the song is. I don't see. All I can think of is here's going to be something really hard that's going to be written out, and I got to really, this is not a chord sheet thing. This is a harpsichord. All I can think of is Bach. So we did another song first, and then they passed out the music for Sound of a Different Drum, which is written, incidentally, by Mike Nesmith. And I look at it, and I'm looking, and all I see is chord charts. It's all a chord sheet. And when it comes to a solo on a harpsichord, it says, "Rock and roll Bach style." And I said, "Oh, my God." So they wanted me to play like... And this is on a harpsichord. And it was amazing, because that became a key to the record. It's in the intro, and in the middle of the thing is this kind of famous harpsichord solo, and it became famous especially in school. all the universities that I talk to, or I'll get a phone call from some master class. How hard was that part to play? Everybody thinks it was a written out part, but it was all improvised. There was nothing written whatsoever except the chords. Pretty wild.
That is wild. I just got a message from Ginger. It says, "Can you remove Roundtable, please? Can't read comments." I didn't even know the comments were being displayed on the screen. She sent me a screenshot, and honestly, Ginger, I have no idea how that's happening. So I don't know how to turn any of it on or off, and I don't know how it gets in what layer. So in this software I'm using, I really honestly don't know how they do that. So let me switch it here. So I will look into that, and thank you for the shot. I didn't, wow, I don't know. I'll have to figure this out. So thank you for letting me know. And sorry for that technical difficulty. I'll have to watch that. That is on Facebook then, I'm guessing, correct? So that's where you're watching. So anyway, I will work on that. Let's see. I'm going to go to a couple of story names that we have listed here, and maybe we can fast round some of these things. So we already told us about the Good Vibration sessions, but you had a story about Help Me Rhonda.
Right. We told that.
Okay. Oh, right. Then how
that.
about the Elvis story that I've heard you tell before?
We were doing, in 1968, NBC did a thing called a comeback special. And this was Elvis at his, he had been away for like 10 minutes, as I say. He never was away. But they called it the 68 comeback special. And they had a full orchestra. And we were at, where were we? We were at East West Studios, which was then United Western, in their Studio A, which is a gigantic symphony studio. It's a big, big studio. But they were recording live. They had the full orchestra, and Elvis was there live. And we were catching up with stuff, so we were recording on Saturday. Now, Saturday means you get time and a half for NBC for television. And what you don't want to do is go past midnight. Because if you go past midnight, it's what they call golden time. Then you don't have to work the rest of the month when you do that. So he was having a problem hearing something. He couldn't hear it, and we kept going back. It was on Jailhouse Rock. He had this little 8-second cue, and we did another song and came back to it. He just couldn't hear this cue, and we had been working from the afternoon, from 12 till now. It's almost midnight. It's about 11:30. And Elvis says, "Don," he comes over and sits down. He says, "I just can't hear this." And he hands me his phones, and I put the phones on, and in his mix was the whole orchestra. And it was driving him crazy because it was really a rough mix. He couldn't find his cue to come in for the. I said, "Well, just a second." I said, "Go back to the booth." And I said, "I'm going to hold on to your phones for a second." And I went back and forth inside, and first I had him take the strings off. Then I had him take this off. Then I had to take him the horns off. And I took the girls off. They had girl singers with them. Then I went over, I said, "How is this?" He said, "Maybe I just have a little more of the rhythm section." And I said, "Give him more of the." Now it's 11:45. And time is running out. It gets to about 10 minutes to 12. And the floor manager for NBC walks over to Elvis as he's standing with me. And he goes, "Elvis, would you mind?" And he points to his watch, like, "Watch the time," like that. And Elvis just looks at me and looks at the guy. And he says, "Are you getting hungry?" I said, "Yes, I am." And guess what? They did. They called a lunch break at 10 minutes to 12. We didn't come back till 1:30. It must have cost NBC about $80,000. Hurry up, would you? The cue was 7 seconds long, if that much. It was an in and out because it was a dance thing and singing thing. Guess what? We were there. We all got paid. The whole orchestra.
Wow. Good to be the king.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Elvis.
Okay.
And that gets played. That gets played. They keep bringing it back, so we get good residuals on.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Okay, the Nancy Sinatra, "These boots are made for walking."
Yes, they sure are. Nancy is, well, you said that's the love of my life, I swear. She and I have been together since 1966. She's the nicest person, the greatest lady to ever work for. I've watched her children grow up, and she was just a great human being to everyone. Everyone around her, they would do anything for her. When we were doing Boots Are Made for Walking, it's written by and produced by Lee Hazelwood. And as we're getting ready to do it, I hear them yelling at each other in the booth, and I just look up, and you can hear, and Lee's telling her, no way we're going to do this song. It's a man's song. She says, you got to be kidding me. This is a woman's song. And they're really shouting at each other over it. And finally says, okay, you win, And he goes out and says something to Chuck Berghofer, who plays the great bass line on that. And we went back in, and that became one of the monster hits of all time and a signature record for her, because the minute you hear that bass playing in her shows, the audience goes crazy. They know it's going to be These Boots Are Made for Walking.
Yeah, when I heard that story, I can't even imagine a man singing that song.
No.
I don't think anybody can.
Well, he wanted to do it for himself. That's why.
That's what it was. Okay, well, next story, Lumpy Gravy, Frank Zappa.
Oh, yeah. Well, we were actually doing a date at that point for your former boss, Lou Rawls. We were doing a session with Lou, and I was going home. I was in the hallway at Capitol Records, and they grabbed me, and they said, you got to help us out. I said, I'm on the way home. What are you talking about? Well, Frank Zappa is in Studio B. And I said, who? I didn't know who Frank Zappa was at that time. He said, he's a great new rock artist and songwriter. I said, okay. So I go in, and as I'm walking in, I hear, Pete Jolly and Paul Smith, two great piano players, walked out on the date. They couldn't take it anymore. They said, had enough. So I said, uh-oh, what did I get into? So I sat down, and it's a song called Lumpy Gravy. Mm-hmm. And, you can't, when you do the Zappa stuff, as far as I'm concerned, you don't try and make a form out of it. You just take it. It starts here, and it ends here. It's nothing, and you just go with the flow of what the music is. And we did it in 2 takes. He was very thankful. He was the nicest guy. And I went home. And I forgot about it completely. And they had, of course, they paid me double scale, so that was even nicer.
Yeah.
And later on, over the years, especially now, the younger people that are Zappa fans, they always come in and ask me to play it, and I can't play it. And Jamie Kime and yourself, who did that Zappa on Zappa tour, nobody wants to teach it to me. And I'm going to have to learn it. I think Jamie said he was going to make a copy of it for me.
Well, it's interesting. I think I remember that tune because there was a lot of different keyboard parts.
Yes, there were.
And we had the benefit of getting individual tracks. And so I had the mallet parts on my track, but I remember the keyboard player saying, well, you'd never be able to pick out this line by listening to the whole thing. So they were really grateful to have all the parts. Yeah, Jamie should get you a copy of that. So that's cool.
It was pretty amazing. That was the beauty of recording in all those days, because it was live.
Yeah.
I didn't go in a room by myself. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to do it. And then if you make a mistake, then you would redo it. Today, if I went in that same room, if I was in a room by myself and I made a mistake, they'd say, keep on going, because you did it right 3 other times, and then they cut and paste, It's just so different.
Well, yeah, I listened to these old albums, the Righteous Brothers or whoever, and it's just amazing to me. It's like they just all played the track. There was none of this, I made a mistake, go back and edit and all that sort of stuff. That's pretty incredible, especially when you look at the Wall of Sound with the 600 guys in a room. Let me see if I can find that picture. Here's a picture from the studio.
Yeah, that picture you're showing there is when we were the Wrecking Crew.
Okay.
We were the Wall of Sound, and now we were becoming the Wrecking Crew. And the Wrecking Crew, I'm in the very, very corner. I'm cut off, right, sitting next to Leon.
Oh, right. You're way on the left of the photo.
Yes,
the piano.
But that's a great bass player and guitar player. To the right is Ray Pullman. Uh-huh. And there's Lyle Ritz is in that, too. And Hal Blaine, of course, is at the drums. But, that transition, when they started calling us the Wrecking Crew, it basically was because all the guys that were in the suits all those years were kind of getting aced out. because here we were. Most of the guys smoked in those studios. They came loosely dressed. They didn't, they weren't worried about that. And we were accused of those guys are going to wreck the business. And that's how we started being the Wrecking Crew.
That's a great name. So, hey, I think it's time for you to play a little bit more. You got another song for us?
Let's see. What can I play? I'll play you a song that we got to record at Capitol Records, where Dave Axelrod produced this. And it's written by Lalo Schifrin. It's the theme from The Fox.
Always love it when you play that song. It's such a great tune. But we have a special guest in the chat room right now. Nish has shown up.
That's
Hi,
my
Nish.
co-writer.
Yeah, Nish. We already plugged the book. I put the thing up there, but Nish is here. You can talk to her in the chat room and on Facebook and see. That's her name down here somewhere. Which way? My left, your left. That was very cool. Somebody did ask, though, if you could talk about Loves and More again.
Loves? Well,
I don't know this story, so this will be fun.
I'll tell you what. We get a call. You're a studio musician. You get a call, and it turned out to be the rock and roll group called Love, which had a major hit called My Little Red Book, and it was written by Burt Bacharach of all things.
Wow.
I can't even remember the song right. It became a number one record for them. But they were basically a blues-oriented, more of a funk band. And actually, they were pretty stoned and drunk the whole time. But I got to play, I guess, on 4 or 5 different of their cuts. And they still play them all the time. And people that are fans of that band always ask me about them. And they were nice, but they were just either going to be dead or get sober,
Yeah. Now, you have a good story about Leslie Gore. It's my party and I'll cry if I want to.
That and a whole bunch of stuff that we did. And this guy comes out from New York and hires Jack Nitzsche for Leslie Gore. And Jack was a great arranger who I work with constantly. And he was a close friend. And it turns out to be this young guy from New York by the name of Quincy Jones. And I had the greatest time. That was the first time I ever met Quincy. And it was wonderful. He really knew what he wanted. We did, I guess, 4 or 5 different songs in that date. And we had a great time doing it. There's a poster around someplace of all of us together on that date. And that was a date that Tommy Tedesco was on and Don Peake, Hal Blaine, and myself. And Pretty wild, pretty wild.
That's great. And then let's see. Okay, and I want you to talk about this because this is something that my generation might remember, but the jukebox is all over the country. And you said that Seaberg was the one that did the background music records.
Yes.
Tell them the story about this. This is kind of mind-blowing.
It is. They would hire me to do sound-alikes So I hired most of the singers in Los Angeles, especially Darlene Love and her sister Edna Wright and Fanita James, and they were such great. They were the Blossoms. But then sometimes I would use Clyde E. King and that group, and we would do all the cover records of all the biggest hits that there were. I mean, they were giant hits, but they couldn't pay the royalties to the artists, so they would do sound-alikes. And we sounded like everybody. I remember Julius Wechter from the Baja Marimba Band. They wanted an album of Herb Alpert stuff, and we wrote a bunch of original songs that sounded like the Tijuana Brass. So that was one of the albums. They needed those kind of things, and we did over 1,000 different songs for them. And it actually they paid me between $12.50 and $15 an arrangement. We would do 7 songs in the morning and 7 songs in the afternoon and go through one after the other. The singers, though, I mean, the bands were great, but the singers, they knew every nuance of how to make those sounds,
So it's funny to think that, listening to those jukeboxes, you think you're getting the original and you're actually getting sound-alikes. But,
exactly.
Who's looking that closely at the album?
Oh,
the
no,
little
they don't.
Record
They just
disc
look,
in there.
they look at the titles, that's all.
Yeah, the little title things. I remember those. That's great. So let's see. I have so many notes because Don and I hang, so he came over the other day.
You know what's interesting, too, is the different styles of the producers.
Let's talk about that.
Phil Spector was one style. Brian Wilson was another one, but there was loads of guys. Dave Axelrod at Capitol Records, Dick Glasser, but one outstanding one. They all had hit records. All of these guys. Jerry Fuller at Columbia. We did the Union Gap. We did O.C. Smith. Lee Hazelwood had a bunch of hits. I did over 100 albums for him. And then Warner Brothers had a guy who was ahead of the department, Jimmy Bowen. Now, he had a knack better than most of these guys for selecting songs, the repertoire that an artist should do. He would pick Sinatra songs out, Dean Martin songs out, and a lot of other people's songs. And he had that knack of knowing what song an artist should sing. Everybody loves somebody sometime. I mean, he picked that out. That was written by Dean's piano player, incidentally. And all these different songs, and it was always so much fun because he had the best artists that was signed to Warner Reprise. So you got to work with all those guys. We did Candyman.
Oh, yeah?
We did Candyman in Las Vegas. It was after Sammy Davis's show. It was Sammy's biggest record.
Yeah.
And it was at midnight in a studio that was right next to a railroad track, and the trains would come in at night. And you have to stop for the train to go by because everything would be bouncing. You could really...
that's funny.
But the sound was good in there. But we did Candyman there, and when we started at midnight, there were no charts. All the charts were written by H.B. Barnum, and he had fallen asleep, and nobody gave him a wake-up call till 2 o'clock in the morning, and then he showed up. So we sat around for 2 hours.
That's great.
But we got that we did 4 tunes that night till 6 in the morning, and Candyman was one of them.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And then how about the Righteous Brothers?
Oh, how about them? I've known them a long time. I used to know them from Orange County.
Wow.
Their first record they had a big record version of Little Latin Loopy Loo. And then Phil Spector heard him and said, boy, I got to get these guys. And he did. He had them for I guess a couple of years. We did quite a few records. And then they left him and went with MGM Records, which was good for me because they still hired me, And You've Lost That Love and Feeling is probably one of the great songs of all time. Unchained Melody I call that the mistake song because Phil asked Bobby to sing one alone and Bill to sing one alone. which was a big mistake. The egos were just enough to break up that band. Mm-hmm. And eventually it did, and then they got back together again. That would have never happened, I firmly believe, if they never would have sung alone. They could have done it on stage, but not on recording, you know. But they both got hits, you know, solely. He did one of the best versions of Ebb Tide. I mean, is in that one, Unchained Melody, So Hung on You. He did a song called Brown Eyed Woman, which is incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, I could listen to Bill forever.
Well, now, speaking of like, You've Lost That Love and Feeling.
Yes.
That intro that's a Phil Spector kind of signature that's been in a lot of songs, right?
I mean, that was Jack Nitzsche. No, that wasn't. That was Gene Page on that one, on Love and Feeling. We did that. That was one of the few Jack didn't do.
Yeah. And now to talk about the producers, but you showed me earlier that I think it was Phil Spector that had a signature intro that was so many parts of so many tunes.
Oh, well, the drum beat with Hal. And more drummers that played on everybody else's record, the producer would say, "Can you do that dotted quarter thing?" And bash on 4, you know. And that was on so many records. I mean, see the way he walked on his that one, a load of the Phil Spector stuff, but a load of everybody else's. One of my favorite albums that I got to do, and I forget to talk about this, was an album that Cannonball Adderley produced with Dave Axelrod for Capitol Records. And Cannon and I hit it right off. It was an African girl by the name of Letta Mabulu. And she could do the click sounds and all that. And it was all new music. I had never played anything with those time changes. And H.B. Barnum wrote most of those charts for all that stuff. It was such an interesting album to do. And she was marvelous. It just never did anything. It was one of those albums that
it's too bad.
Kind of disappeared, you know. But it was wonderful.
Now, comparing Phil as a producer with, let's say, Jerry Fuller or Brian Wilson, did they have kind of a signature method for what they did? Did they let you guys have free reign, or what did they do?
See, Jerry Fuller, Jimmy Bowen, and those guys, you know, there is a reason. I think, this is my own opinion now, the corporate guys like Jimmy Bowen, Dick Lasser, David Axelrod, when they were doing stuff, they were working for a major label. Those major labels all were given budgets to the producers, and they had to bring in 3 or 4 tunes in 3 hours.
Wow.
Or 4 hours. So that you were under the gun to do that, and they were under the gun to do that. So they had to really be with it, top of it, to know where it was going. That's why the selection of songs was so important. Now, when you worked for some of the other producers like Brian and Phil, they didn't care how long it take because they were independent. They didn't have to worry about having to bring it in on time.
Right.
So it wasn't going to go anywhere, you know. So the song, and Jerry Fuller wrote some unbelievable, I mean, monster hits. I went and saw him one night, and every song that he sang was a hit either for himself or for somebody else.
Oh, wow.
And after they took questions, and my question was, can I have your royalties for 3 months? I mean, it was just absolutely incredible.
That's funny. Hey, let me take a break and say hi to some of the people out there. Rick Converse did say that the Loves did sober up, and they're on tour again now. Those that survived. So there's a happy ending there. So, but I also want to say Eddie sent a tip in. So thank you very much, Eddie, for participating in the chat room. Anybody out there that's this is great. They're actually talking amongst themselves. But I guess Nish says to let people know that You Lost That Loving Feeling is in the Library of Congress.
Wow.
Wow. So
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
and Eddie
fantastic.
says that beat you were talking about is called Down in the Boondocks beat.
Yes, yeah.
Yes. So very cool. Hey, Don, you're going to have to give me a minute here. I'm going to talk about the upcoming shows. Now,
Sure.
we normally go from 7 to 8, but we're having such a good time. We're going to go more because I want to get into the evolution of the Baked Potato Jazz Club and all of your albums, the progressions through the years of those
Sure.
sounds. But let me just do my little upcoming commercial sort of thing. And let me press the magic button. There we go. So next week, or this Thursday, 2 nights from now, the Dave Durge Trio is coming in. That's with Quinn Johnson on keyboards and Kevin Axt playing bass. Then next week, Andy Sinisi is bringing a trio called Triage. And I have the guys' names, but I can't find it right now. But it's going to be a killer trio. That should be a lot of fun. June 1st, the Jazz Roundtable is going to be composers. I have 3 guys that say they want to do it. They're trying to figure out their schedules will work, but that's going to be amazing. Mostly big band composers that do other things, but they have chosen big band as their kind of expression. Their I don't know what the word is. Anyway, then after that, that Thursday, Conganas is coming back, and that is the full orchestra Latin quartet. Those guys played a couple months ago. Amazing, fantastic Latin jazz. And then the Tony Jones Vocal Project is coming, and we're having our first vocalist come in. After that is Jazz Roundtable number 8. That is Sax Night. And again, I have 3 guys lined up, and I want to triple confirm before I start saying names, but they are all monsters here in LA that do a ton of stuff. And then after that is Hugh Smith Tate Trio on the 17th. And then on the 19th, yes, a Saturday night, special night, 6 to 8 p.m., we're having an all-star 1-year anniversary special. Our 1 year is actually June 12th, or June 11th was the first show last year. So we're doing it on the 19th because technically LA is opening up, or California on the 15th. We want to make sure everything is safe. We're going to have a bunch of people in the backyard doing the concert, a bunch of guys coming to play. So you want to see that. And we are basically booked through August now as well. You can go to the website and do that. And while I'm at it, if you want to get on the mailing list, just go to the website, live@zerobpm.com. Let me just get that up here so we can see what it looks like. There we go. Yeah, that's the wrong. I don't want that one. Let's see. Upcoming shows. You already know that. So the mailing list is there. You can also go to the tip jar there as well. And as I said before, if you can go just click like or subscribe to this. I see we've got quite a few people on Facebook and a few on YouTube. That would be great if you like or subscribe or any of that sort of stuff. And then these shows, these Jazz Roundtables, also get released as a podcast. And it's everywhere. It's Apple, it's Spotify, it's Google, it's everywhere. So please like and subscribe and give us a review. That helps push us up the list so other people can find us. You know, we're pretty grassroots here, and we're just trying to get some cool information out to everybody. But as I bring Don back on the screen, let me get rid of some of these other cameras. We do have Greg Karukas says, hello, Don.
Hi, Greg.
Yeah, he's over on the YouTube side. And I'm trying to see if everything is going good. It's hard to... Oh, an error occurred. Please try again later. I think maybe we've lost YouTube. That is very strange. If somebody in my Facebook room could check that link and let me know what happened. It says it's streaming, but maybe it's just my playback that's not coming back. So let's see. Rick Craig. Oh, Rick Craig is here. The drummer says, hey,
Sure.
Don. Let's see. Nish does bring up a good point. She says, Don not only has an amazing career, but his memory of this history is phenomenal. It really is. You know, so many things. He brought his computer with him on the side because he's got a database of like 1,500 or more songs or sessions that he's played on. It's really quite amazing. And we're going to talk about a little bit more of that. But you were playing, back in the day, you were playing here at the Surf Shack, Marianne's, and the other places, but then you started the Baked Potato in 1970, right?
Yeah.
With Shelley.
Yes, yeah. We started, Shelley was working at Cy DeVore, men's clothing. Mm. And then he went over to a shop called Bo Gentry, which became the hip store for all the rock and rollers and the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. Everybody went to that store, and I didn't have a dime in those days, and they would always let me get a suit on credit or whatever to pay it off. They were really great to me. And I said, Shelley, one day you and I are going to do something together, and he became my partner. He left there and came to work with me in the first year that we opened the Baked Potato.
And then when you opened it, how many nights a week were you playing?
I was playing 6 nights. And then Mike Melvoin had a trio on the 7th night.
Oh, wow.
No, we were closed on the 7th night originally. And then we were sitting around and saying, we're losing another night, you know. There's 52 of those in 1 year.
Yeah.
So Mike would come in and sit in. I had a wonderful Steinway B piano that everybody loved to play on. Mm-hmm. And so it was attractive because Keith Albright, the piano tuner who did all the studios, would tune that piano constantly. So it was always in tune.
Yeah.
And so that's how we started playing. And then Mike Melvoin played every Monday night or every Sunday. I can't remember if it was Sunday or Monday for 2 years or almost 3 years with a different rhythm section.
Wow.
And that became a thing. Everybody see who is he going to have. And he had some of the greatest musicians playing with him every weekend, and they were different. I don't think he repeated till like a year. A year later, he had somebody finally that repeated, but he was able to put it together like that. And
That's
Mike
great.
was a super pianist too, wonderful pianist.
That's great. And so then you started opening it up, and you had other bands playing the Sunday, Monday night,
Sure.
right? After a while.
Yeah, after a while, and then I went on the road, so I couldn't be there. I was out with Nancy Sinatra over and over, and I'd come back, and it got to the point where she started taking out my band, so my guys would be on the road with me, and then that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it survived this horrible last year, and you guys are doing shows, or your son Justin is running things now.
Yeah, it's Justin's club.
Okay.
And what is really interesting is the survival of it, in spite of all the misinformation and everything. Here we are, a year later, and with a limited audience.
Yeah.
And it's very aggravating when you hear that all these big places are getting unlimited, and yet the small venues
Right.
can't do that, And
Yeah, and you really can't play outside at your place.
no, it's not fair. It's
But
not fair.
let me put you up here, and I'm going to put this up. Where did I put it? Oh, did I forget to put it in here? If you want to go check out the website, it is. I can get this up while we're talking. It's thebakedpotato.com. Thebakedpotato.com. I can do this. Trust me. I do so many things simultaneously. Let's see.
And we're going to play there on June 5th. So,
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can get the magic. There it is. So thebakedpotato.com. Go there and check it out, because Justin has really done an amazing job booking the bands in the past so many years. And it's just a killer lineup night after night after night. And I'm even saying that because, we have shows on every Thursday, and they have people on Thursdays as well. But if you can get out and support live music, that was the whole premise, the start of this show. The live music show was to support live music where we could have people play in a safe environment and broadcast it to people elsewhere. And it's been a lot of fun. But the Baked Potato is still, and I'm not just saying that because I played there a billion times, but it really is a fantastic club, just iconic in the LA music scene. And, you guys started it so many years ago, and now you're playing there, you said June 5th?
Right, yeah, we'll be there.
Okay.
When you think about it, it was started in September 17th of 1970.
Wow.
And to some of the greatest musicians of all time. One of my favorite stories of the Baked Potato is I happened to be in there one night when Harry Sweet's Edison band was playing, great trumpet player, and he had a dynamite band with him. And I'm sitting at the front door, and in walks, as far as I'm concerned, God. It was Oscar Peterson, and I see him, and he was alone. So I stood up and I shook his hand and I introduced myself, and he sits down and he says, "I'm going to sit with you." And Sweet sees him immediately and tries to get him to come up on the bandstand. But he said, no, I'm not tonight. So he's sitting with me, and he says, "That piano's the same piano I play." I said, "I know, it's there because of you." I had seen him play in Chicago at a place called the London House, and they had a Steinway B that he played. And I always thought, one day if I ever have a place, it's going to be a Steinway B. And that's what it was. That piano was there forever.
And then at one point, you actually had a MIDI mod on that acoustic piano.
Yes, we did. Yeah, they did it, and it ran synthesizers. It was great.
I always remember one thing, like my quick first baked potato story is I just gotten up to Northridge to go to college, and some friends of mine who I played music with down in San Diego drove up for the night. And they're like, "We got to go to the Baked Potato." And I hadn't heard of the club, and you were playing there that night, and it was John Guerin was playing drums, and Carol Kay was playing bass. And all I can remember, and it was so cool. I mean, I was in LA as a musician for the first time and going to college. And I just remember that you guys played a swing song that was so fast. John Guerin had to use two hands to play the ride cymbal.
Oh, Jesus.
But it was just, the Baked Potato is just an amazing thing. So
Hey, listen, let me finish that story with
Oh, yeah.
Oscar. So Oscar's sitting there, and Sweets tries to get him to play quite a few times, and he won't do it. And finally, they take a break. I said, Oscar, that piano is there because of you. Won't you play just one song? So he looks at me, and he says, okay, I'm going to do one song for you. So he walks up to the keyboard and sits down, and immediately Sweets comes run over with the band. And he says, no, I'm just doing this for the owner. So he starts playing. But what I didn't know, at the corner of the bar at the Baked Potato was a singer by the name of Sarah Vaughan.
Wow.
And as he started to play, Sarah walked over to him, and he says, Sarah, she said, Oscar. And they ended up playing just Sarah and Oscar Peterson for 30 minutes, for a half hour. You could hear a pin drop. But then he sang duets with her on 2 songs, and he sounded like Nat Cole when he sang. It was just beautiful. And here we are. No tape recorders going. Nothing's going on. What a great thing that would have been to record. Unbelievable.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But thank God I was there, Wonderful story.
And okay, so now albums. Your first album was 1962.
Right?
Where do we go from here?
No, it wasn't.
Oh.
It was called Feeling Like Blues.
Oh, okay.
That was for World Pacific.
Okay.
Where Do We Go From Here was the second album for Verve. We moved over to Verve for 2 albums, and onward. We now have 22 different albums.
Yeah, and then in '63 was when Mexican Pearls came out.
Sure, yeah, that was a
And
big
that made top 40.
That did.
Wow, amazing. And then you got into this. Now you have the band Quest. How long has it been, Don, Randi, and Quest?
Well, I think around 1974.
Okay.
That's when that started. We were the Baked Potato Band, Don Randi and the Baked Potato Band before that, but everybody wanted to be called the Baked Potato Band, so I lost out. So we came, and Quest it's a good name.
Yeah.
For me, it was I'm never satisfied. I can get happy with something, but I'm never really satisfied. And it's always in search of, which is the definition of Quest.
Right. Very cool. And then your latest album is the duet with
John. Yeah, that was so much fun doing.
Acoustomania.
Yeah.
I do show notes of these things, so I will put the links to those specific
Yes.
albums and a bunch of Don's
Sure.
stuff in his artist pages so you can find it. But Acoustomania, tell us about that.
That was fun. We did it at a studio in Pasadena called Firehouse, which is no longer there. It's gone. But they had a wonderful Bosendorf acoustic piano that was just amazing. And John and I rehearsed for almost 10 months. We knew every song. And we actually recorded it in one day. We were done at the end of the day. We did a couple of little pickups the next day, but that was about it. It was wonderful. And Damon Tedesco, Denny's brother, was the engineer of that.
Wow.
Pretty wild. That album was so much fun doing because it's all original music too that we wrote for the album.
Yeah, it's really a cool album. So, well, just so you know, people in the chat room are talking about their favorite shows at the Baked Potato.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're going to come close to the end. I still have so many notes of things we talked to. Said your most fun album was the Merry Christmas with Phil Spector, which I think you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, sure.
And then you had some great stories about touring with Nancy Sinatra. Do you want to tell the Linda Carter story, or should we just keep that between us?
that was a. She was so wonderful to work for, but her husband was a moron. So what can I tell you?
As will happen sometimes with the managers. So I guess the last story I want you to tell, and I know this story because you guys do a Wrecking Crew reunion tribute to Glenn Campbell, who was originally one of the guitar players with you guys.
Oh, he was amazing. Glenn, we all knew he could sing because we would do demos. They were called 2 for 25. We would do them in Studio B at Gold Star, and Leon Russell and I would do a lot of them, some of the other guys. But the songwriter got us for an hour, and they could get 2 songs. They had to do it, and then somebody else. And we did it like one day a week for a while, I think on a Saturday or a Sunday. But Glenn sang all those demos for those songs. I'd say he sang 80% of them for the songwriters.
Wow.
And so those demos were better than they ended up being original records. I mean, they were just amazing. And he would learn so fast. Unbelievable.
Because
we called them elephant ears.
Yeah, because he didn't read music, did he?
No, not at all. But he heard music quicker than any of us.
Right. That's.
That's the intro I play and play through the whole song, I'm Not Gonna Miss You,
Yeah.
which is the very last thing I got to do with Glenn. And he and I sat across from each other, and he didn't even know who I was. And we had worked together all those years. I get choked up even talking about it now. I sat there crying and playing the song with him.
Yeah.
And there he is, just playing the guitar and singing amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to miss you, you know.
Well, you were saying that Glenn had a degenerative disease, right?
Yes, he had, Alzheimer's, really bad.
Yeah, and so when you guys had all been thick as thieves as part of the Wrecking Crew, and then he came back later to sing this song with you guys, and he couldn't remember any of you.
No.
That must have been heartbreaking. It
was hard. It was Joe Osborne, Hal Blaine, and myself. Mm-hmm. And we were at a NAMM show, and they called us and got us down there. They sent a car for us, mm-hmm. and we all went because they knew we were there for the Wrecking Crew. They were showing the film.
Yeah.
And we all went back and did it, you know. And
yeah.
you know what the saddest thing for me now is so many of the guys are passed on, you know, and they all were such great musicians, great musicians.
Yeah, we were talking about Earl Palmer, who is one of the original. Well, you'd have two drummers on the Wrecking Crew and the Wall of Sound sessions.
Yes, sure.
And he was a great cat. He used to hang, you know, at the clubs, at Charlie O's down the street and stuff like that. It was a really good cat.
All Palmer was one of my favorite human beings of all time. Yeah. He and I used to go to basketball games, baseball games, and he was just an all around, completely different style of Hal, where Hal played his stuff and Earl played his. Earl was more of a blues jazz player, mm-hmm. New Orleans style, whereas Hal was more of like a heavy hitter, big band almost.
Right.
You know, playing rock and roll.
Interesting. So I wanted to end on that story because I know that Glenn story, and it's so powerful. When I first heard you guys talking about it on the show, that's amazing. And so I want to thank you, Don. Do you want to play one more song for us as we go out?
I'll play a little.
Play a little song. Thank you, Don. It's been a pleasure. It has been so much fun, and there's so many great comments in the chat rooms about this. Toby sums it up and just says, "Don, thank you for bringing us joy all these years."
So, that's lovely.
We'll have to have you come back and bring some of the other cats from the Wrecking Crew, and just you guys can tell more stories that we don't know and haven't been printed yet.
Sure. That would be wonderful.
Okay, so I'm going to play the outro, and I want you all to stay and watch because I spend hours on these every week. It's a little blurb. I pay a fortune for the voiceover guy, so it really helps if you could just watch it to the end. And then if you can come back Thursday to see the David Durge Trio, that would be awesome. And then keep supporting us. You can tip anytime you want. Oh, and Tom Zygmunt, who's another drummer, a friend of ours, just sent a tip in, a very generous one, as has everybody. Tom, Eddie, Andre, and Rick. Thank you very much for that. If you're watching a archive of this, you can still tip. So I think we have had a problem with YouTube. It seems to have died on us. So I will replace that on YouTube with the Facebook stream so people who are looking for it can find it. And like I said, if you want more info on all this stuff, I will put a show notes page up very soon. So here we go with the outro. Let me see if I can find the right button. There it is. Oh, I can't. Let me have to do the manual click. And thank you, Don, and we will see everybody soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us at Live at 0 BPM. These videos will be archived on YouTube and Facebook, so tell your friends. These Jazz Roundtable shows will also be released as a podcast, so please subscribe. Coming up on Thursday, May 20th, it's the David Durge Trio featuring David Durge, Quinn Johnson, and Kevin Axt. Showtime, 7 to 8 p.m. Pacific. And as always, it's free, though donations are greatly appreciated. Go to live@0bpm.com for details and to sign up for our mailing list. Also, find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See you soon.